Thank you. And then Nydia Lewis is our Director of Fort Worth ISD Adult Education and Literacy Program, has been an educational professional over 16 years and has been an invaluable member of the Fort Worth ISD Adult Education team for over 11 years and served as director for the past 3 years. She's been married to her wonderful husband for 19 years and they have 2 amazing children. Mrs. Lewis strives to empower adults today for a better tomorrow. She believes partnerships with parents and community partners are essential to enriching the lives of adults in Tarrant County. And at this point, I would like to introduce Lori Slayton, who is with our TWC Adult Education and Literacy Program. And she is going to introduce the MACC Center. This is the Math Assistance Call Center and how programs are using it. And she is going to introduce this to us.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Lori Slayton with the Adult Education and Literacy Division at the Texas Workforce Commission. I just wanted to pop on and say hi, and I'm going to turn off my camera here. I'm so glad you guys are here. Welcome to this edition of Teacher Tuesday, which is sponsored by the Math Assistance Call Center. So for those of you who are new to MACC services, providing the team's participant ID number to your students is really essential. Participants really need to have that ID with them when they reach out for help, whether it's for immediate math assistance or to schedule an appointment for tutoring. Students can access services in a variety of ways through their computer, their smartphone, a landline, yes, a regular old telephone. If need be, they can still get assistance. Tutoring is offered in multiple languages. It is open for business from 7 to 10 daily, Monday through Sunday. So yes, on the weekends too, we get that question a lot. And I'm just going to go over a couple of forms with you guys in case you don't have these. And this flyer is one that you can share with your students. It has all of the MACC contact information, and it's got a place for you to include your program name and location and their team's participant ID number. So you can write this down on this form for them and they're good to go. And these are accessible. We did make sure that these are accessible forms. So that's the flyer for the students. The next one is the same flyer in Spanish, also accessible. And the next form is the referral form. Now, this is a little bit different. The teachers use this form to refer students to the Math Assistance Call Center, and it goes directly to the call center. So the more information you put on here, the easier it is for the MACC to work with your student. When a referral is received, a tutor will reach out to your student about setting up a time to work together. So if you don't fill out anything else, first name, last name, participant ID are essential, and program name, email, or phone. That way, the MACC tutors can be really proactive with assisting your student rather than waiting for the student to have like a math emergency where they've got to get an answer right now. You don't have to use this particular form, but if you do design a different form, please put the same data fields on it so that we're getting consistent information about the participants. See, I got the easy part. I'm just going to review the forms and I'm going to pass it off for the hard part. And our next form is the last one I'm going to show you. This is a sample memorandum of understanding in case you don't already have one in place. I think at this point, the majority of our programs do have one in place, but if you don't, feel free to download this form and share it with your director. It has, the reason I really like this form is it's got a couple things on it. One of them is it's got step-by-step instructions on setting up your MACC classes in teams, how these direct tutoring hours are reported back to you, to the locally assigned staff every 2 weeks. And it explains that you need to use there's a MACC state leadership funding code in teams that won't be released until you've got an MOU in place. And it tells you, number 1 on the second part, you've got to contact team's technical assistance, and then that fund code will be released for you.
Gloria, Taylor Spruce has asked, where can we find these forms?
If you go to the home page, the TCall homepage, there's a banner that says Math Assistance Call Center, and it's got a link to these forms in it. And then we put them in one of the institutes, and I'm trying to remember, I think it's in the Instructor Institute where we located these forms, or a link to these forms as well. And then I'm always happy to send them to you. If nothing else, reach out to me. It's just lori.slayton@twc.texas.gov, and I'm happy to send those out. And so now I get the fun part, and I'm going to introduce Miss Nydia Lewis with Fort Worth ISD. And she's going to tell us how she's using the MACC in her program. Good morning, Nydia, or good afternoon now.
Good afternoon. How are you? I'm going to also follow suit, and I'm going to turn my camera off to make sure that our bandwidth is good. Here at Fort Worth ISD, the MACC Call Center has been a valuable resource to our program. It has served as a personal support for our students. A lot of times we refer those students that are really struggling and can't grasp the concept of math during class time, or if they're trying to prepare to take their math exam, or they just need that extra help. The call center helps to build their self-esteem. So it serves as our personal tutor, student support. It helps to build their self-esteem, academic achievement, as well as student success. It becomes the student personal support system. They're already working with their instructors inside of the classrooms. So sometimes we have those students, and as adults, we're afraid to make mistakes. We don't want our classmates to know that we don't understand. So they actually get that one-on-one personal support when they call the call center. It helps them to feel good about themselves. It helps them to build their self-esteem in their own ability to do math, which is very important. Because when they build that self-esteem and they have that confidence in math, they're not afraid to make the mistakes anymore. They like to work more challenging problems, and they just feel great about themselves. So the Math Call Center has really served as additional student support for our students here at Fort Worth ISD. As I said earlier, it helps to build their self-esteem. It gives them that power to think, I can achieve this, I can work harder, I can be successful. And as you know, math is always something that mostly everyone struggle in. So I like that it keeps a very positive attitude when they're working with those specialists, because they are very informative. They allow them to ask questions. They make sure that they go through the concept, and the student does not have to feel like I'm doing something wrong, or my student know that I don't understand. So it really helps to build their self-confidence. When it builds that self-confidence, it leads to academic achievement. It helps our students prepare and be prepared to take that HSC exam. It works on those different concepts that they're missing. And once it helps them feel that they can achieve those different concepts, whether it's slopes, fractions, decimals, percentages, whatever they're struggling with, they can actually work with that personal support for them to help them to understand whatever they need. And it leads to academic achievement. And after academic achievement, it leads to student success, which is our next slide.
I just want to, Fort Worth is one of the largest consortiums in the state. So how do you work with the teachers to let them know how to access the call center and things like that, some of that background stuff?
So what I do is we have a lot of professional development. Once we receive the information from the state, we always have professional development to introduce any new programs or resources that's coming into the program. My PD specialists and we work very closely with our instructors to make sure they're trained on how to use them. One thing that I think is very important are the forms. And I know Dr. Rose is going to talk about that a little bit later. Make sure that all the information is on those forms, and those forms are filled out completely so that those students will know that So when the call center receives the information, they know what student they are reaching out to. Also, we have to emphasize to make sure that those students are available, make sure that they know they're going to receive a call or a message, and whatever time they put on there, make sure that they allow that time to do that special session that they've set up for that training. And so I think the biggest thing is making sure that you get it to the boots on the ground, whether it's through a PD, whether it's through a meeting to introduce what the math call center have to offer to your staff.
Excellent. And have you gotten any direct student feedback about the call center, about, anything that stood out as far as a student story?
I think the one thing that stood out was one of our students talked about that the positive attitude of the person on the other end that they were working with. They felt very comfortable working with, the support person because they were very educated on what they needed to teach, and they allowed them to ask questions and they answered the questions, and they just felt like it was a very positive attitude.
And that is so important, especially with math. I love hearing that because math is scary enough. We don't need people scaring them even more. So I appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
So next is Dr. Glenda Rose of Community Action. So I will let her get started.
Okay, hello, good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to talk about how we use the Math Assistance Call Center specifically in community action. So a little about us. We have the grant for the 9 rural counties that surround Travis County, where Austin is. So we have a 200 to 300 mile radius of people who are trying to help students get through their high school equivalency. And so that's a bit of a challenge. In my area, I cover 3 counties. I cover Fayette, Bastrop, and Lee. And what I found was I was doing a lot of one-on-one tutoring, which as the area coordinator, I don't have a whole lot of time for just a couple of students who just couldn't get past the math. They'd already failed it once, or they were having struggles with the practice test. And so I'm going to give you a little history of how we ended up using the Math Assistance Call Center at Community Action. So what happened, when I was working at T-Call, I was working with John Stevenson when the initial MACC rolled out, and I was helping him because I was helping with the Distance Learning Institute at that point. I was helping him get that rolled out and advertise it to people. So it wasn't that I was not aware of the resource, but our organization in particular wasn't using it. And in the day-to-day craziness of trying to manage teachers and students and classes and everything else that goes with that, had kind of let it go to the back of my mind and hadn't really thought of it. And then on the next bullet point, you'll see that I actually attended one of these webinars back in April. So we haven't been using it very long, but when I attended the webinar, it reminded me of all of the benefits of having an online tutoring service or phone-based tutoring service available to these students. And that would free up me a little bit, and especially these students that I was concerned about that weren't getting a high enough score on their practice test, or they were not passing the actual test, even if they had a passing math score on the practice. So at that point, I took it to our director, the fabulous Doug Mudd, and said, what do we need to do to get this started? So the next thing that happened on my next bullet point is we got that MOU in place pretty quickly. So I went to the webinar on the 9th, and by the 22nd, Doug had established a memorandum of understanding with Student Nest. And then if you go to the next one, the next thing you have to do is you have to get that standard operating procedure, that SOP in place. And so Terry Schmens is also our data manager, our adult education manager's marvelous data person. She helped us get that SOP in place so that we could start using the MACC with our students who needed that additional support. So I want to clarify that I've talked to other people, other organizations that are using the MACC, and a lot of them were making it available to all of their math students. We were much more, it actually started off with a pilot in my area, but we were much more focused on these students who were showing extreme difficulties getting through that math test. So here is an example. I thought this might be helpful if you are just starting out with MACC, the operating procedure that we came out with. So there was one class for the whole organization, all 9 counties, that was created in teams. Each coordinator for each area, so we have, I think, 15 coordinators, they complete a referral form and they send it to Student Nest and send a copy of it, copy me on that email, because I'm the instructor of record in teams for that class. And so once I get that, we have a share file, which is a secured server. They upload that referral form and I have a special place for that so that we can actually keep track with who we referred. I have an Excel spreadsheet also of who we referred, who's actually gone back and used the tutoring, who scheduled tutoring and didn't show up. And that kind of helps us keep the students accountable once they're using the system. And then once they have attended, of course, I enroll them in the class and teams. I get that biweekly report from Student Nest and put their hours in. And then I also make sure at the end of the month that everything is correct. And, I do look at those reports from time to time because of the internet, because technology is what it is. The report didn't look quite right. And I will say Student Nest is extremely responsive to answering any questions I had about the reporting. For example, there was one student that was actually using our internet in our Bastrop Learning Center because she didn't have internet at home because we're rural to attend her tutoring sessions. And I knew for a fact she had been there for an hour and it showed up for like 7 minutes on the report. So I knew there was something wrong, but I sent an email to Student Nest. They checked into it and they adjusted the report appropriately. So what had happened was Zoom had failed. That never happened to you, right? Zoom had failed, so they had switched over to our Google Meet. I think it was Google Meet had failed, and so they switched over to Zoom, but their process wasn't showing that additional time on the other video conferencing platform. So that's our SOP. If you have any questions about that SOP, you can ask me now. It is important that everybody has a copy of it. All of the coordinators have a copy of it so that they know what to expect and what's expected of them to get their students enrolled. Okay, so I don't know if you're typing, so we're going to go. Who did we refer? So we only referred students who were struggling to make progress in math or who had not passed the GED math test already at least once. The students were identified by their teachers as good candidates for the program. That means they needed to be willing to commit to actually showing up to these tutorials. We kind of drilled it into their heads that the tutorials are free to them, but they are very expensive. And also that we don't want to tie up tutors where they could be helping another student by not showing up. And so we have instituted a rule that if they don't show up 3 times in a row without contacting Student Nest and their tutor and letting them know that there was a problem, that they would not be able to access the program anymore. Because that is a real issue. I'm sure that they'll talk about that, is students making tutorial appointments and then just not even responding when they're being called and emailed and sent texts. They're not even responding to that when the tutor's like, hey, where are you? And that's not fair to the tutor. It's not fair to other students who want to have that tutorial time. And so we try to make sure our students understand that as much as we can. So we started in April. So here are our results for May and June. So these are the students that we referred. So we didn't refer everybody, again, just students who were having trouble. And I think the next animation, I really want to point out Patricia here. So Patricia was one who had already failed the test twice, and she was absolutely determined that she was going to pass this test. Now, part of this is because she went and took the test the first time when I told her, absolutely, you are not ready. So that's on her. But the second time she failed again. And so the third time she really hunkered down. She kind of pestered Student Nest because that when she first started, there wasn't a lot of availability for the tutors because they were also helping the K-12 at their end of year STAR testing prep. So they had limited availability, and she just kept pestering them and like anything that's open, even if it's last minute. And as you can see, she went from a 137 on her earlier test to a 152 when she finally passed and was able to participate in graduation in July. So that is ideal, what we would like to see. And you can see Viviana and Vanessa also 142 to a 152, 144 to a 153. For those of you who may not be familiar, 145 is passing. So anything over that is great. And Maria, we didn't have a pretest on, but she got a 151. So, and there were a couple of people, you see Carla and Azucena, who really didn't follow up and take their tests, but some of those are still working with MACC. So we're hoping to see that improve. So we did have some challenges. One of the biggest challenges is people don't answer their phones anymore. Does anybody have that experience? Because of so much spam that's out there on the phone calls, you have to make sure that the students recognize that they're going to be getting this phone call from out of state that may or may not show up as Student Nest on their phone. Make sure they know the words Student Nest so they know who's calling, so that they accept that phone call. Or if they don't get the phone call and they get a text, that they respond to the text. The other challenge was making sure that those students show up, that they follow through and actually take that scheduled tutoring session. And as I said, we ended up instituting a 3 strikes rule for that. The other problem was for our areas, making sure students had devices and connections that would work. And so we resolved that mainly by making the Wi-Fi available in the different sites that we have classes. So they could go to, for example, one of the high schools or elementary schools where we have classes and use that Wi-Fi for their Zoom session or their Google Meet session. And then, of course, the other challenge, like I mentioned, was when I get those reports, making sure that the reports make sense for what I know has happened with those students. So those were the challenges. But I think the successes were far greater than the couple of challenges that we encountered. So we had made this student tip sheet out. These are some of the things that we had on the student tip sheet. For example, students, of course, are not very self-directed. They come to most classes expecting the teacher to tell them what to do. And so for a tutorial, one of the tips is, you know what you need help with. You come to the tutorial to tell the tutor what you need help with. They don't create lesson plans for you. And so we wanted to make sure the students knew ahead of time that when they come to class, they need to ask their teacher or know themselves what they need to practice with that tutor. The other thing is making sure that they knew that there were other ways to get extra time if the availability was limited. And one of those that Patricia actually brought up to us was to let the scheduler know that you're available if someone cancels. So if you have someone who cancels last minute, hey, call me, I'll probably free and I would love to take a class with you. So that's one way, that's a tip sheet. Make friends with the scheduler and make sure that they know that you are willing and eager to take those classes. And also if you have an official test coming up, asking for additional sessions. Something else that I did as a coordinator, whenever possible, I would give the student a copy of their score report from the practice test or the actual test in GED, so that they could give that to the tutor and say, here's what I need help with. So that was something else that I did on my end. Here's some more tips. That said, please make sure you keep your appointments. So this is the letter that we give to the students. These are real people. Isn't it amazing? People forget that the other end of a internet-based communication is a real person. So it was just reminding them that these are real people and they don't want to be hanging out waiting for you if you're not going to show up. So by letting them know, they free them up, but also just not keeping them hanging out for no reason. Then something else that we found out was a couple of our students did not hit it off with the first tutor. The first tutor was not a good connection for them. They didn't connect in a way that was making learning conducive. And so it was okay to let the scheduler know, hey, I want to try a different tutor. This tutor's really not helping me. And so, and that it's nothing against the tutors, it's just people. And so that actually made a big difference with a couple of the ones that ended up passing their test, was changing the tutor. And then also letting the students know that if they have any issues with Student Nest administrators or the tutors, to let me know so that we can follow up with Student Nest and see what's going on. And they are very responsive to anything that we've asked them for help with. So just making sure the students know that they can come back to us and say, you know, I've got a problem, rather than just stopping the program and not getting that GED test done.
All right, so this was fantastic. I think this is one of the pieces that we've missed in all the informational webinars, is how a program actually takes this tutoring and makes it a part of their program. So is there any questions or any comments that anybody wants to make? If you want to unmute, that is fine. Sometimes it's easier to speak your question than type it. So I'll give you a few minutes.
And Krista, we do have Chandra Joshi available for questions if they have direct questions for Student Nest.
Right. And so at this point, we'll go ahead and let people percolate their questions. But Mr. Joshi has a few things that he wants to share with us. So I will let him have it.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. This is Chandra Joshi. I just wanted to, first of all, a great presentation. I mentioned earlier, Miss Rose and Miss Lewis did an awesome job in their PowerPoint, and they covered everything normally that I would, so made my life a lot easier. And this kind of limits me to, the questions and answers here. We had sent out a survey and we received some feedback from the program directors as well as students. So I just wanted to, hopefully you can see it, but I'll read the question that was posted to the students and then the response. So the first question was the tutoring program helpful? So 97% ended up saying that it helped them, which is a great result. I mean, there's a lot of things that happened during the last 3 to 4 months, with COVID, the Delta variant around, it really messed up. I know a lot of students got sick or their family members got sick, and that impacted scheduling. A couple of our tutors did also, either they got sick or their family member did. So, even with that, we still showed 97% of the individuals saying that they were helped. So that was great. Did the tutor support your math needs? 100% of them said yes. So before I go on, this is not 100% of the students. This is only 100% of the students that replied. So I just want to make sure, it'd be great if, 300-400 students were saying the same thing, but this is just a reflection of the individuals that actually replied to us. So in a way, this number may be skewed in a positive way, but some of that stuff is out of our control. Did the tutoring services support your learning? Again, the answer, 100% yes. Since the start of the tutoring program, did your math skills improve? So 35 out of 36 people that responded said yes. And were you able to make a measurable skills gain as a result of the tutoring? Again, 97% said yes, or 35 out of 36, which is great feedback considering the program started back in October of 2020. So it's been, I think, Lori, might be a year to the day, or maybe 1 year and 2 days. So it's pretty good.
We have 3 days and it'll be 1 year.
3 days it will be. Feedback from the programs. Was the tutoring program helpful to your students? Again, we had 9 responses. 100% said yes. Did the students receive the help they needed? 100% of them said yes. Were the students able to make measurable skills gains? 100% of them said yes. Did the customer service team provide you with timely reports? So 2 out of the 9 said no. And I'm hoping, I didn't get a chance to look, I will reach out to those 2. I don't know if this is an old answer. I hope it is, because I remember there was at least one person, there have been at least 2 or 3 people that I've personally been dealing with to make sure that they're receiving the reports and they're receiving them on time. So hopefully, like I said, the results are the older results and not current, because I haven't seen current requests saying, can I please get a report? I have seen a couple of emails where I'll kind of just put it, jumping the gun. We're providing the report, even though it's due once a month, we're actually providing it twice. But when we say the 15th and the 30th, you do have to give us a couple of days to be able to enter all the data, double check the data, and make sure that we're not missing the information. And with holidays and weekends, sometimes that might delay it a day. But generally, we're trying to get it to you before the 5th at the beginning and by the 18th to give you the cutoff on the 15th. So like I said, I will look at the detail behind the 2. And I personally give you my promise that I'll make sure that we can, tighten up that time as much as possible as it relates to getting the reports to you. And as was discussed earlier, I think the interaction you've been having with the students has helped tremendously bring down the no-shows, or at least people notifying us early enough so we can reach out to another student. The last 3 or 4 months, the number of sessions did go down. Again, as I mentioned, the Delta variant had a lot of impact. Again, not just on your students, but some of their children, some of their parents were impacted, and thus they needed to take a break from that. The summer itself, because school was closed, also had an impact. I will tell you, in the last probably 2.5 weeks, if you had somebody say, hey, or you may have them say, I didn't get my session on time. We had one individual who was leaving on maternity leave, and they were supposed to be leaving, I can't remember right now, towards the end of this month, but per their doctor, they had to leave early. So that created a little bit of a gap for us. We did try to reach out to all the different students, but I get the feeling we missed 2 or 3 because I personally dealt with those students and I have helped reschedule them with other tutors. But we do have that little bit of short-term scheduling issue where before I can really bring somebody in, I have to make sure they're trained properly so we can keep our services at the same levels. So we're almost there. I have a couple of people who've extended their hours, working a little bit of overtime to make sure we can cover as many students as possible. So if you do hear from somebody, please do know that was the main reason behind if somebody didn't get their services. And that's it on my end as far as presentation and comments. And as they said, I'm here for any questions that somebody may have. Thank you for your time.
All right, so questions. So Yoliette has a question that says, hi, Chandra, what is the status on the video?
The video is needing a little bit of edit. I also got sick, thought I was only going to be sick for about a day, but it turned into like 8 days last week. And you can hear me coughing now and then, so sorry. So I'm kind of lagging behind on some of my tasks as well, your video being one of them. So I'm hoping in the next day or 2, I will have the edits done and have it shared with you and everybody else. So it has been ready for my view. Like I said, I think I might have told Lori last week that I've been kind of out of it. Didn't have COVID, just my body doesn't like the cold, and then all of a sudden the weather changed in our area and threw me for a loop. So
Well, I'm glad you're better now.
yeah, thank you.
And Anne says it certainly seems that it is a valuable tool to give success to the student. And I certainly agree with that. I mean, free math help is just, it's invaluable. So we really want to make sure that this resource gets to the students.
And this is Chandra again. I will add, unlike the previous time when this program started, and this is not a knock on the previous time because it was a pilot. The push by the programs throughout the state has been tremendous. And I think that's really helped. And again, the fact that you guys are following up on the comments that either Lori or feedback, I should say, that Lori and I provide about working with the students has really made the program, I would say, at least twice as valuable, if that makes sense, as it was before, because I think it's running more smooth. The amount of time people are coming in between 2016 and 2019, I think people used to come in, I have a question in math, can you help me? Great, thank you, and off they went. This time around, I forget, Patricia was there for 42 hours, which is one of the changes, and I think has been a positive change, and the amount of services that people are requesting and benefiting from. So
some programs would like to have students that stayed for 40 hours. So the tutoring, that's awesome.
And I do want to give some kudos to Lori Slayton as well. I think every week I get almost every week, I get some kind of communication, and the amount of meetings she's setting up. Again, the more information we can provide you, the better the program runs. So I think she deserves a lot of credit for keeping this moving in the right direction. So.
Definitely agree with that. Absolutely. All right. Any other comments or questions? Anne said she will certainly use this. Oh, and Lori reminds all those hours count in teams. The tutoring hours are direct contact hours, so no reason to not use it.
And I did receive, I think, 2 or 3 new MOUs in the last week or so. So that still means that the word is getting out. People are starting to sign, getting ready to sign other people. So that's great.
That's awesome. So this is from Lori, TWCT Collins Student-ness. Wish you a happy Tuesday and a great week. Thank you for joining. Next month, Teacher Tuesday is November 9th, and we are going to be doing an overview of the Content Standards 3.0. So be watching for that. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye, Krista. Thanks.
Bye-bye.